Everyone for joining tonight's Labor, Education, Workforce, and Youth Committee meeting. We are broadcasting live on HPA-TV.org, Channel 96 on Comcast and Frontier Networks, and will be later available on YouTube, HPA-TV's YouTube site. Currently tonight, we have our committee members, Councilman James Sanchez, Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti. John Gale is not here tonight, and we have Director Kim Oliver. So thank you guys for joining us tonight on this Wednesday evening. So call to order. We have one item on the agenda. Last week, we announced a great program that was spearheaded by Director Oliver and all of her efforts. And we're here today to get updates on the presentations on the early learning hubs. So Director Oliver, the floor is yours.
You're muted.
Hello, there we go. It's much better now. Am I able to share a presentation or?
You should be able to.
Sure. Yeah. Let me give you share. How do I do sharing right?
Oh, it looks like it may be doing it.
Okay, go ahead. Take it over.
Or so I think. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Do you guys see a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Yes.
Scroll back up. Okay. So I'm going to share this presentation. Obviously, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. This is to give an overview, definitely, and invite to ask more detailed questions. So our Learning Hub program is a program that really came out of this concept of how is it that we were going to be able to keep children safe and also parents working. We didn't want that to be a situation where parents had to make that choice. And so we wanted to figure out, was there a solution that we could work together in partnership with our school district as well as community-based organizations and others. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are. And as I said, feel free to ask questions as we go through. So this initially started way back, believe it or not, in August. And one of the reasons it started then was because the writing was on the wall, in terms of what parents were going to be looking at. We were very fortunate in my department, as well as the school system and other across the community, who really were engaging parents and families and asking questions. Okay, what are you concerned about? Unfortunately, many of our parents, of course, actually lost employment in 2020. However, for the ones that were working, they were dealing with this big childcare issue. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was really to identify, okay, this is a need, we think, and how can we validate it, et cetera. So what we were able to do, and I know there's a lot on this slide, but bear with me, is we were able to connect with the school system who was asking some of these questions, as well as what were the plans for parents in terms of bringing their children back into school buildings or having them learn remotely at home. So this first bullet point in terms of assessing parents' childcare needs was really about a survey that Hartford Public Schools put out in the August timeframe, where, as you can see here, that 43% of families selected that their children actually return to in-person learning, and that's between kindergarten and grade 3. And before I continue, just to let you know, kindergarten and grade 3, we knew that this issue was going to be paramount for our younger children. There is a preschool age program that, in fact, we here at the city help to manage for the city through our school readiness, as well as we have key partners like CREC and others who are doing Head Start. But we knew that there was going to be this gap. And if anything, we would have perhaps had it through grade 5, which was what we were initially looking to do. But we just want to make sure that we had options for our younger children that were going to be mostly in need of adult supervision. So I also added a bullet point here from the Boston Fed. I think that this is not going to be a surprise to any of us here, as well as watching that 65% of our families usually have actually a working parent. So most of our households, and in fact, I think we could probably argue in Hartford that number is actually higher than 65%. But I really wanted to also underscore the fact that when it comes to childcare, we really have three big words that we're always looking at, which is affordability, quality, and availability. So in terms of affordability, childcare is very expensive, as we all know. I think most people, whether you have a child or you love a child or childcare is expensive. It could easily run in hundreds of dollars per week. In terms of quality, that's something also that we obviously were very concerned about, because you need to be in a trusted place, but also a place that is safe and healthy, especially during these times of COVID. And then also availability. There are usually only so many slots. And how is it that we could ensure that people who actually were in need would be able to be prioritized? So the graph that's down here below speaks to the different learning preferences. I bring up the number here of the 2,167 of those families that responded that their children would be returning to in-person. But you can actually see this breakout, and I know it's not very large here, but a breakout where you can see the difference between kindergarten going all the way over to your right to actually grade 3. So if you are option A was basically that you were going to return back to school. That's the gray bars. If you were incomplete, that meant that we included that you would be considered in person because we didn't know otherwise. And then options B and C were about remote learning. So that just gives you a little bit of a visual of how it was looking. And again, this is a snapshot in time from back in August of 2020. On the same slide, we also worked to really take a look at our actual funding needs. And, City Council, thank you very much, confirmed that we would be able to use of some of the CDBG funding that we received, specifically looking at childcare and other family and children needs. And so we were able to utilize that first $750,000. We know that some additional dollars that the mayor's office is working with you on that we believe will give us another $250. That gives us about $1 million that comes from CDBG funds. So this effort, I think, is really important to underscore, is really founded on the fact that we do have CDBG funds, and that's community development block grant funds for those who may not know what CDBG is. And also Hartford Foundation. And I should update a couple of these things, because the good news is the $497,000 that was requested was actually confirmed and secured, and we've actually received that. And so we're really grateful to Hartford Foundation to be able to do that. Some of this verbiage really speaks to how we were planning to use the dollars. So $400,000 of the 497 goes directly over to CBOs. And then one of the things that Hartford Foundation was really generous about, in particular with one of their donors, to really talk about what are the other things, though, that's needed to really support the operations of the program, including our personal protective equipment, our public health consultation, meaning us being able to have a public health nurse that would actually be designated to the program and our partners, and as well as digital support. Digital support in our case here is not about the device itself. The device comes from their school if needed, and there's usually a small number of families that may not actually even use a school-based device. But it is more about that Wi-Fi capability and making sure that if we have 30 plus children in one building, all trying to connect and be on school at the same time, that we were making sure that they had the right type of technology and support for that. And then also in terms of some coordination, not very much, quite honestly. We're leveraging a lot in what we can at DFCYR in my department, but knowing that we likely would have to across multiple partners, making sure that we were all walking together in step together. The other pieces here has more to do with the fact that Hartford Foundation's generosity was really, they worked hard to be able to meet our request. And that meant splitting it up and slicing and dicing. And fortunately, Hartford Foundation was willing to do that with us. I've also highlighted here that United Way and some other foundations have actually said, hey, I'm here too. How can I be helpful? I'm in conversation with United Way right now to do some potential supports. They were really generous in 2020 with some gift cards to families that City of Hartford Office of Community Engagement worked with them on, and thinking about, could we replicate something like that for the families who are enrolled and are in need. So if it's a gift card to go do, say, some food shopping or that type of thing, to be able to support families in that way. Also, more recently, Nutmeg Foundation, I want to acknowledge as well. They're a smaller foundation, and they have put themselves also here. And what we've also talked about is additional supports for our parents. Because some of our parents, and I was, fortunate to speak to a few of them last week directly. And the unfortunate side of it, though, is that a lot of our parents are in need. I spoke to a parent who was working 35 hours a week in the fast food industry. Just last week learned that her 35 hours is now 5 hours a week. That's it. And we were talking about her trying to get some food in the house to take care of her 4 children. So a serious need. And how is it that we're able to support those parents so that if you're dealing with issues where you're still working, but those schedule hours are obviously not going to be enough, how could we be supportive, helping to navigate you to the right partners in community and elsewhere for you to move forward? So, as I mentioned before, and doing the work to really make sure that we understood what the needs were and what we thought our resources were, how is it that we could provide these supports, acknowledging that we needed to be able to figure out sites and childcare supports, and really focusing on our working parents and those who were impacted by the school facility closures. That's a lot in that sentence, but just to unpack it just a bit, it's really important to acknowledge that we know that there's so many different families across our city who are in need. Again, with the reality of resources being where they are, if you're working, wanting to make sure that you didn't have to make a decision, was it your child's, and take care of your child versus working. We didn't want to have to be in that position. But the other piece here is that if you are a family that chose to have in-person learning for your child, meaning that you did not have a child care plan, right? Because you are dependent upon our school system to provide a safe place for your children during the day, that we wanted to make sure that we were targeting our support to those families. And in doing so, moving to my second bullet point here, we would be building a citywide network, again, that's keeping our children safe and our parents working. So this gives you a little bit more detail. And what I'll do is make sure that I will immediately email this to all of you, and also make sure that it's available for the public on our website. And also, Councilman, make sure you have it to give it to others as well. But I won't read through all of this, but what I really wanted to acknowledge is really working with different CBOs who had facilities. There's a lot of wonderful organizations out there who wanted to help, who are dependent upon school facilities. And while it's so generous of them to offer, if we're closing the school facility, well, it's difficult then to say, okay, now we can reopen it and still have those kids in. It means that something is not exactly in alignment. So we were looking for partners who did have their own facilities. The other piece here, in terms of it being vetted by the Office of Early Childhood, the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood, this is a program that is administered by the city. So what that means is, without going into all these deep statutes and regulations, we are not required to be licensed. However, the reason we wanted folks who had licenses with the Office of Early Childhood means that you're working at a certain quality standard. So each one of the CBOs that we are working with have been licensed. They are programmed, received licensing for their programs in early childhood education and also in terms of their youth programming. A little bit more here talks about how grant funds can be used. And I'm going to skip down here to the fourth bullet point in just terms of CBOs in academic enrichment, youth development, playful learning. So we also want to be realistic here. So we're kind of in this weird gray area that we usually don't exactly always explore. So anybody who has a child who's working learning remotely right now knows this. Your child is in school. They have a teacher they're working with. And yet, how many parents and loved ones are like trying to help the child log in, or the child has a problem? Children are going to ask for help, and we wanted them to be in a supportive environment. It is critically important here, though, to note they are in school. Officially, their education is the responsibility of their school, whether it be Hartford Public Schools or if it's CREC or whoever. However, I think it's unrealistic to think that we're just going to have children at a device who actually don't have background in academic enrichment, playful learning, all these other things here. So again, the wonderful thing about working with the CBOs that we are working with, they have expertise and experience in this. So none of these folks are new folks. These are folks that we've been all collectively sending our children to for decades. And I think that was really important. But I did want to acknowledge that. Again, the responsibility of the actual lesson is on the teacher that is doing the remote learning with the child. But we do want it to have a supportive learning environment. So now moving over to this lighter orange side here on the right-hand side, just really talking about the different CBOs and what they're doing in the different grant awards. So here is the list here, and I'll show the locations a little bit later. Boys and Girls Club, we are working with them for 104 slots across 3 different sites. They do have facility capacity for 140 children. They are receiving an award of $436,800. Catholic Charities, we have right now working with them with 20 children for an award of $84,000. CRT for 103 children for $432,600. YMCA 40 children for $168,000, and the YWCA 66 children for $277,000 and $200 rather. So I know these are different numbers. There may be some questions as to how we got to these numbers, but the actual formula is consistent across all. So what we did was approximate about $700 per month for each one of, I'm going to purposely call in this case slots that are our seats are taking care of our children. And then you multiply that out by number of children by 6 months, and that's how you get these numbers. So it is consistent. So it wasn't as if one was weighted than others. The other thing, again, I want to underscore here is this is also based on facility availability based on the current guidelines that we receive from the state. And the reason I want to underscore that is because there are some organizations that I'm listing here that are interested in, hey, if there are other places we can find in the city, they are willing to continue to support and try to serve more children. So I just did want to bring that up. So again, in most of these cases, you're seeing some people have bigger or more facilities than others. Good so far? Okay, all right. All right, so here are the actual locations. So they're, and oops, do I have a question? Okay.
So I just want to welcome Councilman Gale has joined us tonight. Councilman Gale is on the line. Thank you, Councilman Gale.
Hello, Councilman. So another thing I should have said, these wonderful children you're seeing in this presentation, these are all our children. These are all wonderful Hartford children and families that you're seeing in this presentation. So it's one of the benefits of my job is that I get to work with these beautiful people. So, so 7 locations across the city serving a total of 333 children. So as you can see it listed here, We have our Boys and Girls Club that has 3 different of their facilities that we'll be working with. Their Northwest, Southwest, Trinity facility. Catholic Charities at the Institute for the Hispanic Family. CRT at the Ritter Child Development Center. YMCA at Wilson Gray Youth Center. And then the YWCA on Broad Street. So these are the 7 facilities and locations. And I think one of the nice things that also happened that was really important to my department as well as the mayor was that we had some type of geographic spread across the city. We know that in terms of where people are located, it's not always going to be perfectly even geographically. So we worked really hard in partnership with the CBOs to make sure that we did have some type of spread. One of the questions I've received in the past is about transportation. At this point, we're not able to provide transportation to our families. And so it's one of the reasons it is important to have a number of locations that are across the city. So a little bit about eligibility and recruitment is, and again, I will share all of this with you guys so you don't have to write all this down. Number one, of course, you need to be a resident of Hartford. This is based on our CDBG funds and other support from our general fund. You have to have a working parent that earns low to moderate income. That is based on our CDBG guidelines. And obviously, these are the parents, again, going back to that concept of affordability that we want to make sure that we're able to get to. Your child has to be enrolled in in-person kindergarten, first grade, second grade, or third grade. In-person is a really important word there. If you chose to have your child do remote learning and you already had a child care plan, we're asking you not to take the seat away from another family that was really depending upon their child being in school in order to make it work for their family and keep their employment. Another thing that's important, and obviously this does impact most of our children in Hartford, is the actual school you go to has to be in hybrid or remote only status. So again, if you're in a situation where you could be going to the school building because it's deemed safe, you need to be going to that school building. And again, we're doing so, again, with the priority that we're getting to the families who are in need. And again, that school building that you're going to is closed either in totality, meaning you're in full remote learning, or in hybrid because of COVID-19 related school facility closure. So again, your school is not closed, but you have a facility that's closed. In terms of recruitment, we are working in partnership with Hartford Public Schools and our community-based organizations, which I have to tell you guys have really been wonderful. We already are serving a little over 50 students as of last week in terms of who's already enrolled in the program because people jumped all over it. I mentioned to you guys that I had parents calling me who were trying to get to the information. And we've also made the information available, not just on the website. If you go and look at the actual press or announcement from the mayor's office, they'll give you a link to Hartford Public Schools, but you can also go to hartford.gov, go to my department, Families, Children, Youth, and Recreation, and we immediately will link you to a page that will give you all of this information as well. The other thing here that I wanted to acknowledge too is that of our more than 300 seats, we are initially saving about 50 of those seats for the children of teachers. We know that has been a concern about the actual teachers who are teaching our children don't actually have childcare that is working for them. We are waiting for referrals right now from Hartford Public Schools. If for some reason those don't come through, just give me one moment, please. We will be releasing those to the public. So we're giving our teaching staff and other staff at Hartford Public Schools about a couple of weeks or so, and then we will release all of those to the public. And then finally, in terms of the actual timeline, I shared, hey, we initially got together in August to talk about family needs and issues, and have been working on this project behind the scenes for some months together. We were able to really in the fall look at what our resources were going to look like, as well as apply for funding from Hartford Foundation, and was able to secure that funding in December. We initially, in partnership with Hartford Public Schools, sent out marketing in December, right before our holidays. And then in January, where we are now, we've made our announcement and we've started the programming, and it runs through June. So that's my presentation. Questions?
Thank you so much, Director. Just to say thank you for sharing this PowerPoint. I speak on behalf of my colleagues, and we love PowerPoints. It's great. But I'll open up the floor for my colleagues if you guys have any questions. Yes, Councilman Sanchez.
Yes, I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a statement, and that statement is basically thanking you, Kim, for everything that you've been doing since you've been on board. I think you're doing a tremendous job helping our community and connecting with them and finding the resources to help them out. So I really appreciate this presentation as well. Helping us understand how we're going to move into this new year with the school system and our students and the parents and the workers. So thank you so much for that.
No, thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
Again, to echo Councilman Sanchez, thank you very much. Have you, Director Oliver, has anything, how do I want to put this? As you've built, a ship that you're sailing and never built before, has there been anything that you've found extremely difficult or surprising, or is it, if there's any way that we can help in any way, can you let us know?
I would say the first thing is, the demand, obviously, and the need is greater than the resources we have. That kind of goes without saying. I will also, I just want to really acknowledge the partners in terms of the community-based organizations. This has been a heavy lift, and for every question that's been asked, and hey, are you in it with us? Everyone has been wonderful. We are also, as part of this program, the children are being fed, and we're leveraging our child and adult care food program. That's through the State Department of Education as a USDA program. Most of you guys know the program well. And that's going to take a lot of paperwork and a lot of compliance. And I'm just so thankful for Hartford Foundation saying, are you sure, Kim? You don't need any coordination support? Because I was doing this off the side of my desk, and more recently was like, oh, okay, we need to make sure our children are fed and that we're able to do this in the right way. So fortunately, thus far, when we've come up against issues, the partners, whether it be a funder or a CBO partner, they've been wonderful. And also, I want to acknowledge the State Department of Education, because when we're going through some bumpiness there, we were able to quickly work through some things. So I would say, one of the things that's really important, especially as we now have a new administration in terms of at the federal level, as we are able to get these supports, how is it that we can continue to assess what these needs are? It's something that I can tell you, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. We wanted to go to 5th grade and then realized that was not feasible. I shared that number was 2167 or so in terms of kids who were going in person, and that's for Hartford Public Schools. The number is double that when you go to grade 5. And just as a reminder for folks who haven't done the math yet, when you're in grade 5, you're usually only about 10 years old. So you probably could use being in some support. The thing in terms of immediate, I would say the word out, making sure people are getting the word out. I love Hartford. We all love Hartford, right? I was born and raised in Hartford. We try to, make it available, whether it's by phone or online, but word of mouth continues to be the best way to push out these programs. And one of the concerns that the mayor's office, not concerns or just questions the mayor's office has had for me is how do we make sure that the parents who really need this are able to get to this program. And it's two ways to do that. One is always contacting me in my office, because what we're able to do is work with the CBO partners to make sure that those parents are getting the information that they need and that they're finding a seat. But we also, in partnership with Hartford Public Schools, working with the school principals, because we want to make sure if a school principal knows there's a child in a family that could really use this program, that there's getting to them.
So Director, is there any way, can you not share the screen because I can't see everyone raising their hand?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, right.
Yeah, thank you so much. Councilman Sanchez, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, yes, through you, Chair. So I didn't have a question earlier, but I do now. So, and there's two of them. So how are you getting the information out to the community that Spanish is the first language, and obviously are still trying to adapt to the English language? How are we getting that communication out there?
So we're doing it in a couple of different ways. One is just in partnership with the school system, because they are making sure that we are getting to the parents who are for all the kids who are between kindergarten through grade 3, and doing it in the language that lines up with them. The other piece is in office, the community engagement. We're doing something similar, making sure our materials are also available in English and Spanish. Our CBO partners, you guys saw the list there. Some of those partners are more so embedded in certain communities and neighborhoods than others, and are also helping to get the word out. And in my department alone, fortunately, I have department staff that actually speak multiple languages, which includes my main staff person who answers my main number, which for everyone is 860-757-9595. She can also speak to you in Spanish. And if there's other languages like Portuguese, we can also get you staff that can support you that way. So what we're hoping, Councilman, is by using those 3 main ways, especially led by the school system, because we're finally being smart and tapping into that messaging vehicle that already exists with the school system in terms of getting to those parents directly. So we're really hopeful that we're able to do that. But I would also invite, if anyone is running into, they would like more information or materials in writing, just to please let me know, and we'll make sure we get those to you.
Okay, and thank you for that information. So I found it from my experience that in the Hispanic community, including the Portuguese community, they're more, the older folks, the older parents, they're not familiar with the technology we have, right?
Right.
And a lot of times you can give them a brochure or send them a letter, and it's still not helpful. What's the percentage of actual verbal communication, or classes, or maybe a meeting with the parents, a PTO club? What's the percentage of that's being used?
So Hartford Public Schools has been doing a hard push since right before the holidays, which I acknowledge could have also gotten lost in some of the holiday communications that were being sent out. What they've done is, I mentioned and this is to your point, Councilman, the first push was through a written push that was actually their newsletter process. And that's how they get out to every single family that's kindergarten through grade 3. We are also ourselves trying to tap into some key areas of neighborhoods. I'm willing, and my staff are willing to speak to anyone or any group. If you guys have recommendations for that, I definitely welcome it. because I agree with you. I definitely have definitely some of my neighbors and our constituents who may not be watching tonight, may not read that newsletter. And again, this is also quite honestly one of the reasons the school principal concept was really important, because we were trying to figure out other ways to get to those families. So if we have a school principal that says, okay, you know what, I know enough about Kim and I don't want to label anyone or make any assumptions, but if I know enough about Kim and the circumstances with her family that she really could use this, then them giving that information, the school principal is getting that information directly to my department so that we can take it from there. But again, I welcome any other ideas that you all may have in terms of us being able to tap into some other places, because I agree with you. It's what happens a lot with our programming is the people who are in the know, and the people who are not, they're not. And so as much as you have ideas, I welcome that.
Okay, I will reach out to you sometime next week. Then my other question is different, unique programs. Do you partner with any other organization? For example, the Ebony Horsewoman. Is there any kind of networking there or partnership there for our children?
I want to acknowledge Ebony Horsewomen. There's some other organizations like then obviously there are only equine therapeutic partners, so very unique, but there are other partners in terms of OTMAT and so many others who opened up their arms and was like, we'd be willing to partner, especially we did some surveys with our partners back in, I want to say September timeframe, to say, okay, if you have funding, if resources was not the issue, would you be willing to do this? And they were some of the ones on the list. So for me, Ebony Horsewoman, also Hartford neighborhood centers, especially we have organizations that are within communities and cemented as part of the community. One of the things that we are looking at is based on a demand, which, as I mentioned earlier, we do expect we're going to have more demand than what we potentially can serve, is whether or not we could figure out another phase of this. So Councilwoman Rossetti, maybe that should have been my answer. If we have another round of funding, how do we do that? But because I would love to figure out, these are nice big organizations that have these big facilities, but we do have some smaller ones. We also are aware of things have occurred since that September timeframe, just given where we are in the pandemic, that some things changed for certain organizations where just for health and safety protocols, maybe they're doing more of a bubble and they're not, at this point, introducing new children and families. But please know that we are definitely open to it, because if we hit over that 300 number, I want to figure out how we can do a phase 2, because again, the concept is that how do we have a network across the city that's doing this? But point well taken. And I'm fortunate that I have a loved one who goes to Ebony Horsewoman, and it's been such a saving grace, especially during the pandemic. So I hear you.
Very, very different experience, I believe, something that a child will remember for the rest of his life. And just my last piece. So coming spring, which is just a couple of months away, are we planning, or are you planning to connect with, let's say, the Hartford Yard Goals, the Hartford Athletics, to see if there's any possibility to have children's either use their batting cages, or a different type of experience again, but opening up their minds, giving them a place that's safe to play?
I did not have that on the list. I think that's a great idea. I will tell you, one of the things that we're working on, and this is in the combination with recreation, which is why I love my department, but talking about how we do a better job of really we offer programming in our parks, but how can we accelerate that, right? Because how is it that you get outside? Right now, with it being a little bit cold, a lot of us are used to being indoors, quite honestly. But we were doing a good job of that, of trying to ramp that up during the summertime. But I love the idea. And actually, I've been in conversation already with my assistant director for recreation, Troy Stewart, in terms of some initial conversation about Dillon Stadium is is an example, of course, and that you mentioned. And I know Hartford Yard Goats has been very generous already and doing a few different things, and we've worked with them in the past. So I love the idea to include them as we think about places outside for our children, because as you all know, right now, one of our big issues is engagement and the mental health and social well-being of our children. So yeah.
Right.
So
And don't forget, the police department, they also have cops and bobbers where they actually supply all the fishing equipment and T-shirts, and they take children out to Colts Park near the golf course at the pond there to go fishing. So you might want to remember that, so we can engage with more children and bring them out there.
Yeah, no, and especially now that they were doing work on the pond. I know this is going a little bit off topic, but I would acknowledge we have been partnering with the state deep in terms of fishing.
Nice.
We weren't able to, because the pond, as you guys know, was having some issues in terms of Goodwin. It's usually Goodwin and Keeney, but Keeney has been going strong, and we really want to be able to expand that program, because it's like right now, given COVID, fishing actually is a great pastime. Full disclosure, I don't like worms. So usually I go and say hi to the kids and then I run away because they are playing with those things, and I don't think so. But I definitely want to make sure that we're able to have more presence, especially back in Goodwin, again, trying to cover the entire city now that that issue is taken care of.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? So Director, just a quick question. You said a staff person, DSUR, a DSUR staff person? You said it a long time ago in terms of potential staff, and you said you were doing the work on the side of your desk.
Oh, yes. So I was doing the work on the side of my desk. I should also acknowledge my assistant to the director, who has been trying to help me with all the craziness. We're fortunate. We actually are working and have a great relationship, and I'll share. He's one of our retired firefighters. Celestino Jimenez is going to be working with us to help support the program, especially as it relates to all of that wonderful reporting and compliance stuff, especially as it relates to the meals program, which I'm excited about. This is a temporary program. Obviously, we're hoping that by the time we hit June, we're not going to be in a place where we need to continue this program. So Mr. Jimenez was generous enough to offer to provide some support. So I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. And so the next thing is, I think you kind of led to the question, but, I think we're all hopeful in terms of, the vaccine rollout, distribution. We're all wishing and praying and, for the new normal to come about. There's different projections as to when that new normal is going to be. We see some as optimistic as this summer, while we see others that is September 2022. Are we thinking about or planning expanding this? Because if it is September of 2022, and again, that's on the long run, we got another whole year of potential school. And not trying to make more work, because you're building, as Councilwoman Rossetti said, you're building the ship, that you've never done before. But I mean, is there any conversations about that?
Yeah. Remember the days when we thought we were going to be done with this? What did we say? August, September, and yeah. So yes, that's a real possibility. So one of the things that I've also been working with my staff is I'm trying to also make sure we're able to maximize the resources and the assets we have in house. So one of the considerations right now is how do we also utilize our own buildings in terms of our recreation centers, and just trying to, again, think of ways that are low cost, especially if we have to sustain the program. So the answer, yes. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things where you almost don't want to think about it because you want to stay positive, but we have to plan for it. At this point, I don't have additional funding secured. What I'm working on is we already have an issue with the summer. So how is it that we are able to continue to provide some support, especially, again, if we're able to get the families that we truly believe that need the assistance. Fortunately, again, having Hartford Foundation support has been wonderful, and they've been incredible in their generosity, and continue to ask, what is it that you need? What is it that you need? So it's wonderful to have them on board. I'm also fortunate to have, I mentioned United Way, Nutmeg Foundation, but also some other funders who have been, keeping an eye and saying, okay, let's see how it goes if it extends beyond that. So kind of doing that fund development. I think also we're probably going to learn a lot in these next 6 months, quite frankly, about what works and what doesn't work, because we're in hybrid mode. And I know you and I have had this conversation. It's an interesting schedule that happens, right? So right now, if you're a Hartford Public School student, that means everyone is remote Wednesdays. So all of our children who are enrolled in this program will be at our facilities on Wednesdays, the way this is set up. Mondays and Tuesdays, you might be group A or B. You might be a Monday, Tuesday child in terms of going to school facility. You may be also Thursday, Friday. Hopefully we are turning a curve and we're not going to get in a place where we have to see the school goes to remote. So it's things like that and trying to figure out how we continue to be adaptable doing this program and keeping our children safe at the same time. That I think is also going to really inform how we are able to sustain this for both the summer and for next year. I will tell you, when we're able to go outside and the weather is better, we already have kind of a semi-plan, because what we did this past summer, again, was a much smaller number of children, only about 50, when we usually can serve almost 200 children in our own summer camp program at the city. We go outside, we send the kids outside, right? So you're able to be, have fun. We want you to get to know our parks, run around, be healthy, all that good stuff, and still be really safe with that good fresh air. It's when we get to the colder weather that I think we're having more of an issue because of the facilities and all of that. So so we're in the beginning of that process of, okay, if we are talking about this beyond June, especially beyond that August timeframe, how do we do this? And again, I think it's going to be really important for us to get to those parents most in need, because there's a lot of parents who, they may not agree with me, but officially they can afford childcare versus my other parents. But like I said earlier, childcare is very expensive. It easily can run $1,000 a month. And even if you're doing economically well, that's kind of expensive. So.
Thank you, Director. I think that's it. That's it for me for questions. We'll make sure on our end. I know one of the light lift that you asked of us council folks is to, share the information. I think that, we all that's a light lift for all of us. And so I encourage everyone here, and I encourage my other council colleagues to share the information as well. So thank you so much, Director. So I think that's it. Is there, we'll move on to the next bullet item, which is other business. Is there any other business, Director, that you want to talk about? Or, it's a pretty lengthy conversation with the earlier learning hubs. Anything else on your mind?
I feel like it's a lot going on.
We had the inauguration today, right?
I was like, I get to see you guys again next month. So, but nothing else I would bring up as a high priority in this moment. Compared to everything else it is. But definitely, I'll be here next month. So if you're interested,
fantastic. Thank you. And then, council persons, are there any other business that you guys would like to bring up? No.
Good, Councilman LeBron.
All right. Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. In a second. All right. Everyone have a good evening. Enjoy your
Thank you.
Wednesday.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Director.
much.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, guys.